Imagine, just for a second, moving through the world with the absolute, unshakable calm of someone who has already seen every tactic, anticipated every angle, and absorbed every possible blow. What if you viewed your entire life, every single interaction, as a fluid board state? Well, in this explainer, I'm going to show you exactly how my own experience surviving over 350 grueling, high-stakes dueling matches forged what I like to call an untouchable mind. And honestly, those hundreds of matches, they weren't just games, they were high-pressure crucibles. A single lapse in focus meant total defeat. And I learned the hard way that surviving that kind of relentless pressure literally changes your brain from the ground up.
Welcome to this explainer, everyone. Think of this as a highly analytical masterclass, where we're going to examine the world through the duelist's lens, my lens. This is all about stepping out of that reactive, emotional state we all fall into and learning to view life objectively, like a battle-forged strategist. You see, most folks just navigate their days reacting to whatever's thrown at them, right? Getting defensive in a meeting, letting bad traffic totally ruin their morning, absorbing someone else's bad mood. But through the strategist lens, you don't just see the world anymore. You analyze it, you anticipate it, and ultimately, you command it.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's the exact blueprint we'll use today to translate battlefield mastery into real-world situational awareness. We'll hit life as a board state, the untouchable mindset, the dragon sight, the art of intellectual defense, mastering the battlefield, and finally, experience invincibility.
Starting off with Section 1, Life as a Board State, Reading the Field.
To kick things off, we have to completely reframe how we observe our environment. The crucible of those countless duels taught me one undeniable truth. Absolutely nothing exists in isolation. Every single move, every word spoken in a boardroom, every silent pause in a tense negotiation, it all has a ripple effect. It's fascinating how dueling mechanics map directly to real life. Adapting to tempo 2 turns ahead in a match, that translates perfectly to walking into a crowded room and instantly sensing the board state. When I step into a meeting, I'm not just listening to the slideshow presentation. I can immediately read who is bluffing to cover up a weak quarter, who is genuinely dangerous and holding all the leverage, who is just masking deep insecurity with loud aggression, and who is simply irrelevant to the current play. It turns situational awareness into an unavoidable gut instinct.
Because, let's be honest, pressure reveals the truth. Under pressure, people completely stop pretending. Now, the average person judges others by their immediate words, usually driven by this loud, reactive ego. If someone insults them, they insult back. If someone flatters them, they instantly drop their guard. But the elite duelist, I anticipate intentions. I judge people by how they act when the stakes actually rise and the safety net is completely removed. My confidence isn't loud or boastful, it's heavy and it's quiet. It's an earned confidence that only comes through the brutal repetition of surviving incredibly bad hands, keeping a deadpan poker face when the odds are stacked against you, and capitalizing efficiently when the moment is finally right. Moving on to Section 2, the untouchable mindset, focusing on internal architecture.
So the crucial point here is that before you can command the external field, you absolutely have to build an unassailable internal structure. If your internal architecture is weak, external tactics will just fail you the moment a real crisis hits. True invincibility requires 3 foundational pillars. First up, internal fortitude. Welcoming adversity is the primary forge of your spirit. You know, something like that Goggins mindset where you actively turn emotional pain into a curriculum for growth. Second, spiritual immunity. Anchoring your identity to something larger and deeper so that the malice and envy of critics simply slides right off. They have no surface to grip onto. And third, radical accountability. This means completely eliminating the victim narrative. If your boss unfairly yells at you or a massive deal falls through at the final hour, you own your response. No one else holds the keys to your mental space. Period.
To build that unshakable posture, you really must learn to stay the observer. Think about it. The one who watches cannot be wounded by what they watch. True invincibility isn't about fighting every single battle or returning every petty volley. It's an internal posture where distance is recognized as the absolute highest form of control. When you observe a heated situation rather than participate in the heat yourself, you literally rob the aggressor of the very friction they need to keep their fire burning.
This science of emotional detachment works in a fluid, highly logical progression. First, you have the observer effect, removing your ego entirely and viewing hostile attacks as mere external data points. It's like watching weather patterns pass over a mountain. Next is the distancing strategy, creating a psychological buffer where you recognize that an insult hurled at you isn't actually about who you are, it's entirely about the other person's lack of control. Finally, the minimum effort rule. Listen, you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. In fact, a perfectly timed deadpan silence often asserts way more dominance than a screaming match ever could. By giving zero effort to someone desperately trying to provoke you, you process their hostility simply as raw data.
Which brings us to Section 3, the Dragon's Sight, Forging Lethal Instincts.
Once that internal calm is secured and bulletproofed, it evolves into something incredibly sharp. Guessing, that is entirely replaced by lethal precision and perfectly calculated responses. I call this the Blue-Eyes archetype. Now, this identity isn't about chaotic, reckless, chest-beating power. Not at all. It's a mythic, ancient force of noble power and unshakable calm. It's the exact perspective I use to observe the entire battlefield from high above, assessing every moving piece rather than getting lost in the mud and the emotion down on the ground.
So how does this sight function in reality? Through relentless pattern recognition. After surviving intense struggle, your brain literally stops thinking step by step and just starts recognizing instantly. It becomes this massive living library of human behavior. I read intent over actions, sensing emotional leaks, a slight eye twitch, a sudden change in breathing, an unnatural pause in a sentence, long before a single word is actually spoken. That deep calm gives you perfect timing. You know exactly when to push an advantage and when to hold back and let the opponent make a massive mistake. Pressure stops overwhelming you. Instead, it acts as a sharpener, refining your focus to an absolute razor's edge.
All right, moving to Section 4, the art of intellectual defense, neutralizing threats.
Now we transition to external execution. A mind that cannot be trapped or manipulated uses pure logic and strategy as its sharpest armor. You use reasoning as a literal shield. When an attack comes in, say, a colleague tries to throw you under the bus in a team meeting, you neutralize it through cold facts and logical dismantling, absolutely refusing to engage emotionally. By responding with pure, undeniable evidence, you force aggressors to fight on your logical terms. And because you are detached and fully prepared, your terms are always the stronger ground. They end up looking unhinged while you look like the voice of absolute reason.
Building on that, we have rapid-fire advanced tactics. First up are yesable propositions. This basically means reframing the exchange so that every path your opponent takes leads directly to an outcome you want. It's essentially giving them a multiple-choice question where all the answers benefit you. If you need a budget approved, you don't ask, "Can I have this?" You ask, "Would you prefer we achieve our Q3 targets by using vendor A or vendor B?" Boom, both mean you get the funding. Then there are loss aversion tactics. Psychology shows us humans fear losing status far more than they desire gaining it. If you subtly remind an aggressive counterpart what a public tantrum will cost their professional reputation, you completely neutralize the threat before it even truly escalates.
Up next is Section 5, Mastering the Battlefield, Situational Control.
And this brilliantly illustrates how, with the intellectual framework firmly in place, we orchestrate the physical and temporal environment of any confrontation. The mirroring technique is incredibly powerful here. You subtly match an aggressor's posture or tone for just a split second to connect, but then you slowly shift yourself into a calm, measured stillness, literally pulling their nervous system down with yours. It's a biological hack. Couple that with silence as a weapon. Most people are absolutely terrified of awkward silence. You simply allow the aggressor to exhaust their emotional fuel against your calm wall. Just look at them, silently, after they make an outrageous demand. They will inevitably start backpedaling and negotiating against themselves just to fill the quiet. They completely deplete themselves and you remain untouched.
This brings us to weaponizing persuasion, or influence without authority. It relies on 3 clever mechanisms. First, the law of reciprocity, doing a completely unexpected favor to build rapid rapport and totally deflect incoming hostility. It catches people entirely off guard. Second, strategic social proof, aligning your argument with undeniable consensus. If you casually mention that the entire board already agrees with your framework, the challenger suddenly looks incredibly foolish for opposing it. And third, selective disclosure, carefully curating the options you present so you architect the exact conclusion you want before the conversation even really begins. You're giving them the illusion of choice while you steer the ship.
Finally, we arrive at Section 6, Experienced Invincibility, the Sovereign Stillness.
All of this intense strategy, preparation, and control culminates in the ultimate state of mastery, where calm completely transforms from being just a temporary mood into an unstoppable force that actively bends situations to your will. It creates the peace that cannot be broken. Internal peace isn't the absence of chaos. Life is always going to throw chaos at you. It's the absolute, unshakable certainty in who you are regardless of the chaos spinning around you. When you carry that profound knowledge, you become the undisputed architect of your own reality. External attacks, they just slide off like water off a dragon's scales.
This final state is sovereign stillness. It is the strategic calm of someone who has already survived the absolute worst version of every possible moment, and now perfectly predicts the world instead of merely reacting to it. It is pure stored power. It is dominance without the need for aggression, and it is absolute mastery without apparent effort. This is the duelist's ultimate prize. You no longer hope to survive the board state, you own it.
So I'll leave you with this question to deeply reflect on. Are you ready to stop reacting, step into the role of the battle-forged strategist, and start commanding your board state? The tools to read the field, detach emotionally, and neutralize threats with lethal logic are right here in your hands. Now it's up to you to put in the reps. I really hope this explainer reshapes how you view your next big challenge. Catch you next time.